98.5. Here's the great thing. This is a call-in radio show. So you can call us and I can answer questions if you have any questions at 816-599-6893. Again, that number is 816-599-6893. And we are sponsored by Music and More Foundation. Now, my name is Armida Dupree. I am your host and your favorite criminal defense host on the radio. And today I'm going to be talking about guns. Now, people may be wondering who I am. I'm just going to give the Reader's Digest version because we've gone through this before. I've been practicing criminal defense law for over 10 years. I started my career as an assistant public defender with the Kansas City Trial Office, and now I have my own criminal defense law firm. So that's who I am. Now, today, I want to talk about guns and more specifically, some of the gun laws. I find this topic to be very important for a variety of reasons. Now, of course, the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution establishes our rights as a United States citizen to bear arms. What exactly does the Second Amendment say? The Second Amendment to the United States Constitution reads in pertinent part, the right of the people to bear arms shall not be infringed. So we have a right. That right should not be tampered with. It should not be bothered. It should not, the government shouldn't come in and try to take our guns away. That is our right as a United States citizen. Now, the Second Amendment was adopted back in December of 1791. It was one of the first amendments to the Bill of Rights. So in 1791, we all know that the United States of America looked completely different than what it looks like right now. So telephones were invented in 1876. Light bulbs. The light bulbs were invented in 1879. And then you go to the cars that were invented in 1886. So the right to bear arms predated the phone, the lights, and the car. In fact, the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution, our right to bear arms, it was adopted when Missouri wasn't even a state. We were not even a state. Missouri did not become a part of the United States of America. We did not become a state until 1824. We were the 24th state. And then you have Kansas that didn't become a state until 1861. They were the 34th state. So the United States of America looked completely different than what it looks like now. There were no smartphones, no smart cars. There wasn't this mass incarceration that's going on. There wasn't this unconscionable number of homicides in the United States that's going on, not only in the United States, but right here in Kansas City. Right here in Kansas City. I don't think our forefathers, when they were coming up with our right to bear arms or the principle and the law on the right to bear arms, I don't believe they were thinking about 2018 and the state that our union would be in at this time. Now, let me make something very clear. Guns are a part of our society, and I'm not talking here today saying or advocating that we need to do away with our right to bear arms. Matter of fact, I grew up with and I've lived with guns my entire life. The difference is I was around and lived with responsible gun owners my entire life. Now, with that being said, we are going to get to the meat of this discussion. So in the Second Amendment, it talks about our rights to bear arms not being infringed. Well, there are several laws that are on the books that infringe on our right to bear arms. And in most instances, they are good, well thought out laws to limit the individuals who decide they want to run around with a gun. And before January 2017, in the state of Missouri, an individual had to be at least 21 in order to get a concealed to carry. So for a person to walk around with a gun in Missouri that's tucked in his or her pants, that's on a thigh holster, on an ankle holster, on a chest holster, before 2017 in the state of Missouri, an individual had to go through a class. And that class, it's the concealed to carry, or the CCW. The person had to get a permit. So they had to go through training. They had to take a test to make sure they understood what their responsibilities were as a gun owner. They had to take a shooting test at a shooting range to make sure they could hit their target. And they had to score. They had to pass. They had to score high enough to pass. You couldn't get an F and then they say, oh, okay, here's your concealed to carry, even though you don't know the safety features of the gun, and even though you can't hit a target that's right in front of you, here's your license. That's not the way it was prior to January 2017. So we had these laws and these regulations that were in place that required people to be responsible and diligent and understand safety when it came to guns. So then we come to January 2017. And the gun laws in Missouri took a crazy shift. It took just a shift that is absolutely unbelievable. So what happened? Well, it was Senate Bill 656 before it became enacted and is now our law. But what occurred is the requirement for a person to be of a certain age, that's less. So now a person who is 19 years old and or 18, there's a couple of exceptions, or at least one exception, like if the person is 18 years old and they're in the military, or they had an honorable discharge from the military at 18. There's no requirement that a person who is 19 years old go through the class to carry a gun. In fact, There's no requirement as we sit here right now on today, on May 25th, there is no requirement that a person who is walking around with a concealed gun have a permit. So what does that mean? That means that we have people, and thank you, 19-year-olds who are listening. I appreciate you. Hopefully you're going to be educated and you tune in to my show and you find the topics of interest. But we all know how 19-year-olds are. I was 19 not so long ago, maybe about 5 years ago. But anyway, we all know how mature or immature a 19-year-old can be. And to think that 19-year-olds are running around without any training, without any knowledge, without any experience with these guns lawfully is disheartening. It's scary. It is not a good situation that we find ourselves in, especially in the inner city or in the urban core. Okay, there's a question.
Yes, we have a question on the online on our Facebook from Stephanie. She says, "What is my responsibility if I'm armed and walking in the park, then approached by an officer?"
Well, I have a couple of follow-up questions, Stephanie, and thank you for asking a question. Is the officer stopping you? Are you being detained? Or are you passing by the officer on a friendly stroll? Like, what's the circumstances surrounding that? Because if you're just walking past an officer and you're saying, "Hey, good afternoon, be safe, thanks for protecting us," you don't have to say, "Hey, officer, good afternoon, thanks for protecting us, and by the way, I got a gun on me legally." You don't have to say that. But if the officer has reasonable suspicion that you are committing some unlawful or criminal act, then you become detained. They can do what's called a Terry frisk, and they can detain you, and you need to inform the officer that you are in legal possession of a lawful firearm. Hopefully that answers your question.
All right, Stephanie, thanks for the question.
So we're talking about how the law for Missouri changed in January 2017. So a lot of people are probably thinking, well, Ms. Dupree, the criminals aren't going to get a permit, and the criminals aren't taking a test to learn how to shoot. And you're correct in part, because I will tell you that lawful people with guns and unlawful people with guns can commit a criminal act equally. It doesn't matter if you're in lawful possession or if you're in unlawful possession. This topic is not to say criminals or whatnot. What I'm saying is the law has changed, and it has made being in the inner city a little more uneasy.
Stephanie has a little follow-up, and she just put on there, I think you may have kind of covered it, but she says she's just taking a friendly stroll, and the officers stop her for no reason, as they usually do.
Well, Stephanie, the best thing to do in a situation like that, and all viewers, the best thing to do in a situation like that, especially in the climate that we're in, the culture that we're in right now, one, ask the officer if you're being detained. Are you under arrest for something? And tell them that you're in lawful possession of a firearm. don't go reaching for it. Don't go trying to pull it out. Be like, hey, look, see, I got my gun. Don't do anything like that, because unfortunately, we are in a day and age where law enforcement, they're on high alert with people, and our citizens, we as citizens, we're on high alert, period. And just don't go touching, pulling out, or anything that's going to get you hurt, because that is a great possibility. If you go reaching for your gun to lawfully show them, I don't want you hurt. Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to Criminal Law 101 on KUAW, Knowledge, Understanding, and Wisdom. And we are being brought to you by Music and More Foundation. We are going to take a short break, and we will be right back on air in a few moments. Thank you.
So how do you feel?
Good.
You feel like you'll have time?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's make sure we check to make sure the time was right.
Okay, I'm going to talk about, this is the wrap up. It's the last thing.
We'll start at the end of this.
Okay. I can't hear, but I can hear it a little bit. Uh-uh. Welcome back to Criminal Law 101, brought to you by KUAW. I am Armita Dupree, your favorite criminal defense attorney that is on the air. Now, today we're talking about...
Excuse me, but Stephanie said thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, Stephanie. Hey, girl, and happy Memorial Day. Okay, so today we are talking about gun laws, and specifically gun laws that are in that deal with the state of Missouri. And we're going to start talking about some gun laws, some federal gun laws. One gun law that a lot of people are familiar with is the felon in possession. And so that's a federal, when you hear the phrase felon in possession, you automatically think federal case. You're going to look at least 3 to 5 or something to that accord. But under the United States Code, Section 922, a felon in possession, and it's actually not termed felon in possession. The statute is not termed felon in possession. The statute is labeled possession of a firearm or ammunition by a prohibited person. This can be found under 18 USC Section 922. What it talks about is, one is a felon, people who are convicted of a felony, but it also gives a list of individuals who are unlawfully in possession of a firearm. Now, Missouri has a statute that is quite similar to the feds. Under the federal statute, to be in possession of a firearm or ammunition by a prohibited person is punishable of up to 10 years in prison. Now, so it's up to 10 years. So I know a lot of people think, oh, it's a 5 or oh, it's 3 or whatnot. Well, it's up to 10. And if the person who is charged with this crime is an offender or a defendant who has 3 or more felony convictions for a crime of violence, that's like murder, robbery, assault, certain assaults, or if they have drug trafficking or certain drug charges, they're looking at a flat 15. Like they have to, the minimum punishment starts at 15 and then it goes up from there. So even if your charges, even though your convictions may be from state court, if you have 3 or more of those that are considered crimes of violence, and even if you receive probation from the state, you're looking at a minimum of 15, and then it goes up from there. Now, in the state of Missouri, the law, like I said, is similar. It's possession of a firearm unlawful for certain persons. The title is different, but it basically boils down to the same. And this is found in the Missouri Revised Statutes, section 571.070. And it states that if a person has been convicted of a felony under the laws of Missouri or under the laws of the United States, that person cannot lawfully possess a firearm. Now, here's something that people don't realize. So yes, everybody knows that it is unlawful for a felon, a convicted felon, to possess a firearm. But there are other categories of people that fall into this section. And that's the reason why I wanted to talk to you guys about this, because it's not just felon in possession. So let's say you don't have any felonies. Let's say your record is as clean and clear as a nice summer day. Like you're just cool. You're as pure as the driven snow. You have nothing, but you get high all the time. You can't wake up in the morning without smoking your weed, or you can't drive down the street without drinking, or whatever your intoxication thing is. If you are a person who is habitually intoxicated or who is habitually in a drugged condition, you can be charged under this law. You can be charged, and you are an unlawful person in possession of a firearm. Now, the state of Missouri, the range of punishment for a person who is in unlawful possession of a firearm, this is a class D, as in Dupree, a class D felony, and the range of punishment is up to 7 years in prison. So it's not as harsh as the feds, but then, you know, if you have priors, certain things can happen and the range of punishment can get bumped up. However, it's 7 years that you're looking at because you like to get high and then have your gun with you, and you're in a habitually intoxicated state. Another class of individuals who are not allowed to have guns are people who are mentally ill. And these are people who have been adjudged or determined by the court or by a hospital that they are incompetent. They are incompetent. They are mentally ill. Both the federal laws touch on people who have mental disease or defects. Certain people who are incompetent are unlawfully, or would be considered in unlawful possession, as well as the state of Missouri would be considered unlawfully possessing a firearm.
Got one question I really don't understand. It might be that you do, from Joe Ruggieri.
Okay.
He said, I have a question about open carry with intent to fish. Does does this apply in any wildlife areas? That's really kind of
okay. Well, sir, that is an interesting question. I don't know if you are wondering whether or not you, with the open carry law, like we were talking about earlier, if you can take your pistol or rifle or whatnot to the lake and shoot the fish and catch the fish. I don't know. Like, I'm not a wildlife person, but there are, hunters who have their guns, and you don't have to have a permit for those either, if that's what you are talking about.
You also had a comment from John, said that he loves it. Mari and Chantrice, Miss Debonair.
Hey, Miss Debonair, and thank you, John. Hey, Miss Debonair, shout out. She is the most awesome graphics artist in Kansas City. That's just a little shout out to you, girl. Very good, very good. I want to get going a little bit because the show is wrapping up soon. So hold on. Let me tell you one other group of people who are not in lawful possession of a firearm. I'm looking at my notes. The other group of people who are not in lawful possession of a firearm are individuals who have full orders of protection against him or her. Now, if you have gone to a court and the court had the trial, or you consented to a full order of protection, you cannot lawfully possess a firearm. Also, if you have pled guilty or been found guilty of certain misdemeanors like domestic violence, you cannot lawfully possess a firearm. There are a lot of firearms that are running around Kansas City and the state of Missouri. I was reading the U.S. Weekly, or USA Today, U.S. Weekly. I was reading something online, and it's unbelievable, but Missouri has the highest rate of black homicide. Black on black homicide. We have the highest rate. Kansas is in the top 10, but Missouri is in the top. We are in the lead. Why is that? Well, you could possibly say that maybe the new, the Senate bill that went into effect in January 2017, but our homicide rates have been out of control for quite some time. We have irresponsible people in possession of firearms, and it is absolutely unacceptable that as of today, we are at 47 homicides right here in Missouri, right here in Kansas City. 47. It's absolutely heartbreaking for the families of the victim, for the families of the defendant who will eventually get caught. Because people aren't realizing you're affecting not just the deceased person's family, but you're affecting your family as well. Now, I'm going to leave. I'm wrapping up because I got a minute, so I'm going to talk pretty fast, but here we go. Gun ownership is a right. It's not a privilege. We as citizens, we need to be responsible in our dealings with firearms. There are too many children getting gunned down. There are too many women getting gunned down. There are too many people who are getting gunned down in Kansas City and across the nation by lawful and unlawful gun owners. This violence needs to stop. And the only way our violence is going to stop, the only way it's going to stop is if you exercise your right to vote and elect people who are going to be a voice for the people, not a voice for the corporate powers, establishments that be. I'm your voice. I'm a voice for the people. And this is Criminal Law 101. Tune in to me on the 4th Friday of June. Have a happy Memorial Day. And thank you for all the veterans and soldiers who have fought for our country. Thank you.